10:30.
President Reagan goes back to Bethesda Naval Hospital tomorrow for medical tests.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. I'm Connie Chung, sitting in for Tom Brokaw, who's on vacation. The White House today announced President Reagan will enter Bethesda Naval Hospital tomorrow for a urological examination. Word of the unexpected medical test came after several hours of speculation over why the president had scrapped plans for his weekend trip to Camp David. NBC News White House correspondent Andrea Mitchell has more.
Connie, White House officials say that these tests are not related to the president's cancer surgery, which took place a year ago. Officials say the president feels fine and was at his desk today. He had no public schedule, but he did do an interview with editors from Fortune magazine.
He looked physically at least as well today as he has looked in the past, and probably better.
And at his last public appearances on Wednesday, the president appeared fit. But doctors say he would not be undergoing tomorrow's tests if he had not experienced some pain or other symptoms of a urinary problem.
I suspect that his doctors think there may be some problem in the urinary tract, such as an obstruction or a stone or a growth. And these tests are being done to evaluate those possibilities.
Conducted under local anesthesia, the tests will include injecting a colored dye into the veins so that it appears on X-rays of the kidneys and bladder. That would reveal whether the kidneys are working well and whether there are any growths in the kidneys, ureter, or bladder. Doctors will also perform a cystoscopy. A tube will be passed through the urethra, past the prostate gland, into the bladder. It permits doctors to look at the bladder and prostate gland to see whether there are any stones, growths, or obstructions. Mr. Reagan has a history of urinary problems. 4 years ago, he was given these same tests after suffering a urinary infection. Nothing further was found.
I can ride horses and keep on doing everything. Everything was perfectly normal.
But when he was governor of California, Mr. Reagan was operated on to remove small stones from his prostate gland. Since her husband's cancer surgery, Nancy Reagan has been fiercely protective about releasing any information regarding his health. So for 5 hours, the announcement of tomorrow's hospital visit was cloaked in mystery. At the regular briefing, a deputy press secretary was told to say nothing. Spokesman Larry Speaks was brought back from a family visit in Mississippi to make a brief official statement. Asked whether the president has been experiencing any pain, he said the Reagans are very specific about how they like their medical announcements handled, and I'm going to handle them the way they want them handled. But other officials say that the president has been having some discomfort. While he's at the hospital tomorrow, Mr. Reagan will get something else accomplished. He's going to take the urine test for drugs that he has suggested be taken by all senior members of the White House staff. Connie?
Andrea, thank you. Vice President Bush, who assumed presidential power when President Reagan underwent cancer surgery last year, is in Kennebunkport, Maine, and will remain there tomorrow. A White House spokesman said no transfer of power was considered necessary. Still to come on our news, Mike Boettcher on an unusual step forward for blacks and whites in a small South African village. And 12 years ago tonight, President Nixon announced his resignation. Richard Valeriani looks at the strange things Nixon buffs have squirreled away.
Everybody needs a Yugo sometime.
I bought my Yugo because now I can afford a brand new car.
I think it's fun to drive, and it beats my old carpool.
I like the rack and pinion steering and the front wheel drive.
We wanted a dependable second car.
And this Yugo's just what we need.
See the car you need at the price you want, $39.90. Call 1-800-USA-YUGO for the dealer nearest you.
Everybody needs a Yugo sometime.
Yugo, $39.90.
We pulled the wool over Mrs. Johnson's eyes.
What's this?
Feel.
This pink side's much softer. Fresher.
Brand W cleans. Delicare cleans softer. Fresher.
I'm switching to Delicare.
Clean, softer, fresher care. New Delicare.
Why is my antacid Tums? Tums is effective. It neutralizes 1/3 more stomach acid than the other leading brand. And Tums is rich in calcium. To me, that's extra good news.
When you have arthritis, mornings can be nightmares. Some days it hurts just to put on a watch.
Today, people are turning from aspirin to Advil for hours of relief from minor arthritis pain.
Advil contains a non-prescription strength of ibuprofen. The medicine doctors have prescribed over 130 million times in prescription brands like Motrin.
Advil works for hours, and that makes mornings much easier.
For minor arthritis pain, muscle aches, even headaches, Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
A car bomb packed with 110 pounds of explosives blew up today in West Beirut. As many as 20 people, including several children, were killed. Some 90 people were wounded. The bomb exploded on a crowded street as people were going to mosques for midday prayers. One witness called it a massacre. An anti-Syrian group claimed responsibility. It was the Lebanese capital's sixth terrorist bombing in the past 11 days, and the toll now stands at 80 people killed, 457 wounded. In South Africa today, Winnie Mandela and Helen Suzman, two of the country's best-known anti-apartheid activists, were detained briefly by soldiers while visiting a high school in the black township of Soweto. Students there have named the school after Mandela's husband, Nelson, the jailed leader of the outlawed African National Congress. In one small village in South Africa today, the majority blacks and the minority whites joined together to celebrate not the end of apartheid, but the beginning of a new relationship. NBC's Mike Betcher was there.
4,000 Zulu tribesmen, farm laborers in a conservative region of eastern South Africa, shed their overalls for tribal dress. They had come to meet the white landlords of Louwsburg. And in this small corner of South Africa, they celebrated an agreement between the two races. It recognized the village's blacks as legitimate residents here, not just strong-backed, transient farmhands.
As far as my knowledge is, the first place in South Africa such initiative has been taken to try and get a better understanding, trying to respect each other and live as any human beings anywhere in the world would like to live.
Louwsburg's white children still sat across the fence from the black children. The agreement doesn't mean the races will attend the same schools. It didn't give blacks the power to vote in town elections. But Louwsburg's farmers, very conservative men, decided to try to avoid the violence experienced in other South African cities. The farmers and the Zulus agreed to establish a people's court to settle disputes between them. Money was raised to build a black high school. They decided to coexist as best they could under apartheid.
You can't wish them away. They are permanent, as we are permanent. We're all permanent in South Africa. I mean, it's impossible for anyone to disappear.
The Zulu king proclaimed it a small but significant step forward.
We are people of one land, South Africa. We are here as people with one destiny. Our children and their children will all have to live together in this land.
The two peoples celebrated the pact in ways as different as their cultures. But from this day on, they agreed to try to occupy the same space in peace.
It's not the end of apartheid in Louwsburg, but the people in this small South African town believe they have set an example the entire country can follow. Mike Betcher, NBC News, Louwsburg, South Africa.
Soviet television tonight showed an extraordinary documentary. It was about Chernobyl, the nuclear accident there, and the cleanup effort. It was the first time the Soviet public has had a close look at what happened at that nuclear power plant. The documentary, most of it filmed at the end of May, 1 month after the accident, showed miners burrowing under the damaged reactor core in order to put a concrete base down to prevent radioactive leakage. Inside the reactor building, workers were seen cutting through the steel walls in order to set up monitoring equipment. Each worker stayed inside just 2 minutes. The workers were heard talking about how somebody has to do the job. Tonight's Soviet television report indicated optimism over the cleanup effort, a view that contrasts with other Soviet reports that work is behind schedule.
Your days go by fast, your work never seems to end.
That's why we stand behind every Whirlpool appliance with our 24-hour Cool Line telephone service to help with problems or questions, and our national network of authorized tech care service outlets. Whirlpool, quality appliances.
We're making your world a little easier. Whirlpool makes it easier for you. Whirlpool.
Welcome to All Right, a Street bowling event.
And Al, you can really see that Strike Logan has come to play.
Right, Stu. And all he has to do to qualify for All-Rider's free bowling offer is take the certificate from his Sunday, August 10th newspaper, along with an All-Rider proof of purchase, and bring it to any participating bowling center.
And then, Al, he gets a free game when he buys one.
And free is free.
Gee, I couldn't have said it better myself, Al.
Stu,
what?
I believe he's ready to start. Look at that slice.
Oh, hey, that looks good.
Unbelievable!
I've never seen anything like it.
Well, you know, Stu, when it says All-Rider, it's All-Rider.
Right now, you probably think you're getting enough fiber in your diet. You know what? You're probably not. In fact, the National Cancer Institute says we're probably getting only half the fiber we need. Now you can get the half you're missing with Fiber One cereal. Just one bowl of Fiber One gives you the extra fiber you need every day. Shredded wheat can't do that. Even All Bran doesn't have as much fiber. So try Fiber One. Just one bowl once a day and get the half you're missing.
The Reagan administration got part of what it wanted today as the House and Senate debated the Pentagon budget for next year. The Senate voted to lift a ban on anti-satellite weapons tests, something the president wanted, while the House called for a one-year halt to all U.S. nuclear weapons tests, something the White House does not want. House and Senate conferees say they are still hopeful they can get a tax reform bill on the president's desk sometime around Labor Day. But as Bob Kerr reports tonight, there's a lot of work to do before then.
It's been 23 days since Senate and House tax negotiators began meeting amid smiles and self-congratulation in a huge room under the lights and on camera. Since then, the picture has deteriorated. Conferees have met privately in a small room, missing meals, bickering, and leaving aides to clean up the mess. About 100 corporate lobbyists wait in the hallway and, often, obtain copies of secret tax proposals before the conferees get them.
I'll say one thing. Keeping something undercover in this town is about as successful as keeping an exotic dancer covered. Gee.
As soon as lobbyists hear that a particular corporate tax break is in jeopardy, conferees are tracked down. In this case, New Jersey Senator Bill Bradley listens as a real estate developer pleads his case.
So it's going to cause a great hardship in a lot of ways.
In 3 weeks, the conferees have taken no votes. The goals remain, bringing the top individual tax rate down to 27% and some tax relief for the middle class. But the problem is trying to get Senate and House negotiators to agree on how to pay for the lower tax rates. House negotiators would do it by raising corporate taxes, $142 billion over 6 years, by taking away some tax breaks. Their Senate counterparts by $118 billion. Senators arguing that hitting business any harder would hurt the economy.
I'm very, very conscious of the fact that we must not take actions that's going to affect American jobs.
The task of staffers up all night and in on weekends trying to make it all add up is complicated by pressure from defense contractors, oil and gas drillers, mining companies, and real estate developers, all pushing to keep their tax breaks. So far, negotiators indicate they'll agree to eliminate deductions for interest on consumer loans, keep tax breaks for individual retirement accounts for anyone without another pension plan, and for those earning less than $50,000, limit real estate tax shelters, and end special tax treatment for capital gains, profits from stocks, real estate, and other property. Negotiators still must decide whether state and local taxes will remain deductible, when to put tax reform into effect, and what the new tax rates will be. Bob Kerr, NBC News, at the U.S. Capitol.
The Justice Department said today it has broken up a drug ring said to have been behind the biggest amount of cocaine ever smuggled by a single group. The government says the ring moved more than 7.5 tons of cocaine from Colombia into this country over the last 6 years. 12 people have been indicted. A Mexican political protest has moved to the Texas border, where sit-ins are being staged on some of the bridges linking Juarez and El Paso. Demonstrators trying to attract attention to their cause charge that the Mexican government stole a state election last month and their protests were ignored. Robert Elliott has more.
The protesters have blocked 2 of the 4 bridges linking El Paso and Juarez for 6 days now and vow to stay there unless the July 6th election in Chihuahua State is nullified. PAN, the Mexican opposition party, has charged the ruling PRI party with ballot stuffing and other voting frauds. The state of Chihuahua is considered a PAN stronghold, yet it lost the governor's race, all 14 legislative seats, and all but 2 of the 67 mayoral elections. This PAN party leader says he has proof of the cheating. He says this ballot box was already full before the polls even opened, full of pre-votes. Sergio Garcia Ramirez, Attorney General of the ruling party PRI, says he can't deny election fraud, but says the PAN protesters won't accomplish anything by blocking the bridge. Meanwhile, Francisco Barrio, PAN's gubernatorial candidate, is urging his supporters to fight on. So far, the fight has been a non-violent one, and federal police report there have been few arrests. Mexican leaders expected no more than a one-day demonstration. It's turned into a full-time sit-in. Protesters have brought tents, a month's supply of food and water, and have even set up portable toilets. The protesters hope their efforts will get the Chihuahua legislature to take some kind of action, but they're not hopeful. The government party hasn't lost a major election since it was founded in 1929. Robert Elliott, NBC News.
A Florida jury recommended life in prison today for tobacco heir Stephen Benson. He was convicted yesterday of murdering his mother and adopted brother over the family fortune. The judge does not have to accept the jury's recommendation. He can still order the death penalty when Benson is sentenced next month.
Millions of Americans, like me, are living life to its fullest, despite high blood pressure. They see their doctors regularly and control their pressure with diet medication. Occasionally, some may experience changes in how they feel. If you're on blood pressure medication and haven't felt quite like yourself, stay on it, but see your doctor. You can decide on your best treatment, one that controls your pressure and lets you feel like yourself.
Squibb, helping to improve the quality of your life.
It's the Sears Craftsman Hardware Sale, with savings on hundreds of Craftsman tools, like the 16-piece wrench set, 20-piece screwdriver set, or 40-piece drill bit set. Your choice, $29.99. This Craftsman half-horsepower garage door opener with steel chain drive. Sears Best for only $169.99. Better hurry, the Craftsman Hardware Sale will be over before you know it. There's more for your life during our new century.
Sears. Women have such busy schedules today with their work.
Now input your code.
And their families. There's no time for irregularity.
Come on, Mom, we'll have fun. Not just now. Okay.
Yet women suffer from constipation 3 times more often than men. That's why there's Correctol. Its special formula with calcium added combines a mild laxative with a softening agent. It works gently overnight to help you feel like yourself again.
Your sir's really improved, Mom.
Correctol, the gentle laxative so many women prefer.
On special segment tonight, Oman, the quiet connection. Perhaps you've never heard of this Arab nation across the Persian Gulf from Iran. But because of its strategic location, the United States has a huge military stake in Oman and has invested heavily there. NBC's chief Pentagon correspondent, Fred Francis, has looked into this quiet connection.
The Arabs of Oman on the Persian Gulf are American allies, but most of them don't know it. In 5 years, the Pentagon has quietly spent more than $300 million upgrading military bases in this once remote desert kingdom. In fact, few Americans know that the Pentagon is counting on using bases here, the way it once looked to Iran, as a bridgehead to confront the Soviets in the Persian Gulf. It's not a secret agreement, but not many outside Congress and the Defense Department know that 300,000 American troops would be sent here to protect 1/5 of the oil intended for the West, which is carried past Oman through the Strait of Hormuz. Oman, just 15 years ago, a hermit state with 6 miles of paved road and no electricity, whose 1.5 million people were not permitted eyeglasses, cars, or even to smoke or sing, recently celebrated its strategic importance with world leaders at a national day. They honor the absolute ruler, the Sultan Qaboos Ben Said, who overthrew his father in a palace coup in 1970 and has been racing Oman into the 20th century ever since. It is Sultan Qaboos who has become America's most stalwart yet inconspicuous ally in the Persian Gulf. Two administrations have sent former President Gerald Ford to Oman to show appreciation for that loyalty.
To have a leader such as the Sultan, that's a benefit to the United States.
The Pentagon's concern is that a Soviet thrust into the Persian Gulf might be unstoppable, that without help, Oman and the other Gulf states would be quickly overrun. There is also the immediate concern that the Ayatollah Khomeini's Iran will attack Gulf states in a bid to end the war with Iraq. So the Pentagon has developed contingency war plans focused on Oman. Government documents provided to NBC News show that tens of millions of dollars in war supplies are already in place at the upgraded bases in Oman. At Thumraid Air Base, the largest in Oman, housing has been built for American pilots, along with ammunition dumps. At 3 other air bases and 2 naval facilities, more than 10 million gallons of jet fuel is stored, water is stockpiled, shelters for jet fighters are finished, docks have been upgraded. And the Pentagon has filled large warehouses with medical supplies, tents, and spare parts. All the stuff needed to stop the Soviets or deal with Iran.
These bases in Oman are not solely for our use against the Soviet Union. These bases can be used to project American power throughout that region.
The Sultan, who has an army of 24,000, agreed to the base improvements and the stockpiling of war materials, but American access to the bases would come only with his permission, and not just against the Soviets. His approval would be needed to confront the Iranians as well. And although Pentagon officials believe the Sultan would say yes in either case, the actual agreement is vague.
I think when we're going to put in $250 million almost anywhere around this world, the American taxpayer is going to want more than just a nod and a wink to tell you that, yeah, we think you'll be able to use it if war starts.
But Omani officials point out that U.S. warships have used their ports and those of other Gulf states for 6 years now. What is important in the Arab world, often hostile to America, is that this all be done very quietly, that Arab nations that have opened up to U.S. servicemen not appear to be doormats for American power. In short, we and they must pretend that the relationship is less than it is. Fred Francis, NBC News, the Pentagon.
In Iran, an American engineer has been arrested on charges of spying for the United States. The State Department today confirmed the arrest of John Pattis. He was working on a satellite project for an American company, Cosmos Engineers of Bethesda, Maryland. His sister said Iran apparently thought Pattis gave secret information to Iraq on behalf of the United States.
Oh, a headache now. Anybody seen my extra strength Bufferin?
Yeah, my shoulder hurt. And Kim took it. Sore leg.
It'll help that. Kim, got my Bufferin?
Steve does. Got a backache moving scenery.
They all know how good my Bufferin is.
Extra strength Bufferin for Steve's backache, Kim's legs, John's shoulder, Debbie's headache. It goes to where you hurt fast with an extra strength dose of relief.
Curtain going up.
And I'm ready.
For headaches and a lot more, extra strength Bufferin, also in regular strength from Bristol Myers.
There's no other cereal like it anywhere. There's Raisin in the Middle.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
Raisin in the Middle.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
What a taste sensation.
Whole wheat, sweetened with raisin.
A combination with flair. A tasty little package.
Raisin in there.
There's Raisin in the Middle.
Naturally sweet raisin.
Raisin in the Middle.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
Raisin in the Middle.
There's nothing like it anywhere. Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
What's ahead for the Star Wars anti-missile plan on the eve of the Moscow arms talks? Tough questions for the Pentagon's General James Abramson and Representative Les Aspin. Sunday on Meet the Press.
Here comes the diet soft drink you've been thirsting for.
I believe in reaching out to be my best. I believe in a taste different from the rest.
The taste they're reaching for is Crystal Light Diet Soft Drink Mix.
I believe in Crystal Light because I believe in me.
And now there's Crystal Light Fruit Tea Iced Tea Mix. 4 delicious flavors, 100% NutraSweet.
I believe in Crystal Light because I believe in me.
It was 12 years ago tonight, President Richard Nixon gave up his long battle to stay in office. He said he hoped his decision would start a process of healing, as he put it, that's so desperately needed in America. As the trauma of Watergate fades, the fascination with Nixon endures, even grows. NBC's Richard Valeriani reports tonight on some persistent Nixon watchers.
Millions of people saw Richard Nixon make this historic announcement.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Very few people saw Richard Nixon just before he made that historic announcement. This is a bootleg video made by a TV technician who started taping early.
All Secret Service, is there any Secret Service in the room? Out. You don't have to stay, do you? If you're required to? Okay. I'm just kidding you.
That tape is one of the proudest possessions of Harry Shearer, a 42-year-old comedy writer in Los Angeles and a devoted Nixon watcher.
I think he's the great American hero of the 20th century. Hero, again, in that tragic sense of he embodies all the best and worst about this country, you know, the striving, the ambition, the pride, and the insanity.
The Watergate hearings in 1973 were the beginning of what Paul Slansky, a writer who was 18 at the time, describes as an obsession with Nixon.
I'm glad that he's around on some level. I just don't, if he was in power, it would disturb me. Because I think my sense of history is that this man did enough stuff that we don't put him back in power. But as a powerless individual who's just like a celebrity on the People page, he's great.
One of the largest collections of Nixon political items belongs to Chris Crane, president of the Nixon chapter of American Political Items Collectors.
And I would wish that people that say, you know, he was no good, he resigned in disgrace, would take the time to study some of the things that he's accomplished rather than just dwelling on Watergate.
One of his choicest items is a yearbook showing young Richard as the feature editor of the Whittier High School newspaper. Crane also edits a quarterly newsletter about Nixon entitled Checkers, after the family dog mentioned by Nixon in a famous 1952 speech.
You know, the kids, like all kids, love the dog. And I just want to say this right now, that regardless of what they say about it, we're going to keep it.
Why this continuing obsession with a disgraced president?
He's a fascinating, almost Shakespearean character, so multifaceted, you know, and so many refractions and reflections in the man. It's wonderful. It's really wonderful. I think that's what fascinates most people about him.
Political scientist Douglas Musio, whose den is crammed with Nixon items, describes himself as a Nixon addict who has never lacked for a fix.
And there's this good versus evil. There's these two Nixon, the new Nixon, the old Nixon, and there's a succession of new Nixons, and people are interested in the various new Nixons. He's, you know, and in some ways it's fun, perversely.
One thing is perfectly clear. The Nixon watchers are watching with fascinated anticipation as still another new Nixon appears to be emerging. Richard Valeriani, NBC News, New York.
And that's our news. Tom Brokaw will be back from vacation on Monday. I'm Connie Chung in New York. I'll see you again tomorrow night on NBC Nightly News. Have a good weekend.
Is out.
I like it.
3 strong men.
What's your name? Call me Ray.
Just who I was looking for.
Who want to heat up your Friday night.
What are you saying?
I'm saying Stingray follows Miami Vice.
Why, it would be an honor and a privilege. Believe me, he's no chump. You're on.
A winning combination tonight.
Coming up next.